damselflies. If you looked at Doug Uematsu's tying station today, he ties something called the purple veil fly. I've never seen anything work as well as this fly does. It's amazing. I don't know whether it's the ultraviolet strands there at the end of it, just the profile and the way that it works, but I've seen this thing work everywhere. Let's talk about cadence or rhythm. And when we talk about cadence or rhythm, you know, it's how you're moving this bug, more so than anything else. There's a couple ways that we can do it. Typically what most float tubers do, when I see them on the water, they're trolling. The next one, which I think is much more effective, and I use this a lot, especially when I've been able to locate fish, is I just sit in my tube and I cast and I retrieve. Type 3, intermediate line, whatever the case may be, I'm moving the fly the way I want to move it. Going back to the trolling bit, I have found a way to be able to move the fly, and what I did is I said, well, if I'm trolling and I don't feel like doing this or anything, I'm just going to keep it up like this and move it. I can move it soft, I can move it with a big strike, I can do anything I want with it, but that's, you're going to see me out there, and I'm just like this, I'll be da-da-da, trolling around, but we call it the salute. And the salute works because you can mimic a lot of different patterns without a minimal effort. As long as that line's tight, I can make it still. I can make a darting action. Cadence to match what you are imitating. I'm going to go back to those two little guys that we talked about, baitfish fry and damselfly. Surprisingly enough, baitfish fry, you think, oh wow, they're just always swimming around, they're doing this, they're doing that all the time. I got news for you. 50% of the time, more than 50% of the time, I've sat there and watched them in the water, and you know what they're doing? They're just sitting there, they're not doing a thing. But on the average, with a baitfish fry, or pattern that you're using with that, it's fished as slow as you can. Talk about damsels. Remember we talked about how erratic these guys are. It's a faster retrieve. Why? Because the species or the insect life itself is actually calling for that. The last thing when it comes to cadences is attractor patterns. You can go all over the spectrum with that. Leeches, very slow moving. You can represent that. With the pattern that you saw with the olive woolly bugger, you can imitate a damselfly. So now it's your job to go out there, try your different cadences. If one thing's not working, go through that, and you know fish are in that area, go through that same area again. Change the cadence of what you're doing. When you find that cadence or when you get bit, try and remember what you were doing. There are so many variables with the art of stripping that it's actually harder to strip streamers than it is to Stillwater nymph. And most people won't take the time to go through the confusion, the mindset of, I got to get it here, I'm going to try it here, I'm going to do this. But I'll tell you what, when you do, you're going to get larger fish. Stripping flies equates to larger fish, pure and simple. Stillwater nymphing, it's a numbers game. You're going to get plenty of numbers, but you may never get that big fish of a lifetime. Stripping streamers, you have a higher percentage of doing that. Change up your cadence or rhythm. We talked about that earlier. If you catch a fish, go over the area again. I gave you a fundamental on stripping streamers. For such an easy subject, it sure is complex. And it makes things a little bit tough sometimes to understand. But at least I give you an overview of what to look for, what to do, how to do, some of the things you may practice already. Let's get into Stillwater midging, or known as midging. This technique originated in British Columbia, brought down to the United States, and was probably introduced to Crawley probably about 15 years ago, whether you realize or not. A guy named Harry Blackburn figured out how to do it. He would be on the water. He would be whacking 50, 60 fish a day. Guys were looking at him like, what the heck was he doing? Never knew that he was fishing an indicator because he painted his indicator black so nobody could see. Trying to keep it a secret as long as he did is beyond me, but it finally got out. So people started to learn about Stillwater nymphing, called midging. Okay? Real simple concept. Take the fly, put it on the indicator, let it go down, Indicator goes down, I get bit, boom. Not as easy as it sounds, but that's the concept behind it, okay? It's the fly, not the guy, because I guarantee you don't have to do anything. You just heave it out there, leave it. Okay, when it goes down, just like Doug told me one time, he goes, man, this is like watching grass grow. It's boring, but I'll tell you what, it's effective. It works. That's what we're going to talk about now. Let's get into equipment. Next. Same thing, except for now, I'm using 5/6 weight rods, 9 to 10 feet. I put 10 feet in there because people think that 10 feet gives you more leverage. What I do is I fish 9 foot. I can't throw a 10-foot rod if my life depended on it. Okay? And that's just because of my casting style. Remember we talked about that earlier. Okay? Distance casting is not an issue. Reason being is that the other day, sitting at Laguna Niguel, I'm trying there, sitting, getting my depth and everything else, sitting a fly down. Guess what? My line starts to move. I'm fighting a fish with the tippet spool. So if you don't think that fish are right below you, I got news for you, they are. So that's why I say, distance casting is not an issue at all. Okay? If you can get line out 10 feet, why do you think the guides use it? Because their clients typically don't know how to cast. If they don't know how to cast, they cast out 10 feet. They're getting bit all day. They're having fun. It's an effective system, so don't worry about that. So now what I'm telling you to do is look for a stiffer rod with backbone. Okay? I have 2 rods that I use. I have a 4-weight for anything from 1 to 10 feet, and I have a 5-weight that I use from 10 feet and more. And believe me, this year was a weird year because we were Stillwater nymphing in 22 feet of water. It was a nightmare, but if I didn't have the stiffer rod and a heavier rod, probably would not have landed the fish that I was able to land. Okay? What I'm looking for, and typically with a stiffer rod, you're going to find out that it's going to be a fast taper rod, and it totally contradicts because most of us equate fast taper rods or fast action rods to distance. You don't have to have that, but if you have it, no problem. I use a Thomas & Thomas Helix rod. It's a 4-weight, 9 foot. Okay, it's pretty much of a medium fast taper, but I tell you what, when I go in to lean into a fish, I got backbone like you wouldn't believe. This fish is this rod, a 4-weight rod, has landed for me fish in that 20 to 22 inch range. And if you ever saw me fish, I fish like I'm in a bass tournament. If I can't get it in under a minute, I'm pissed. I'm really pissed. So I fish these things to the full extent of what the rods are going to actually be able to do. So this is one that I fish when it comes to something with a backbone. When I get into deeper water, and that's 10 feet or above, then I go to a 5-weight. And
why do you want to get the fish in so quick?
Part of it is because of tournament fishing, the ability to land it quickly. Okay. The other thing is, normally I'll get the fish in so fast the fish doesn't even know it's hooked yet. And I'll have the hottest thing sitting in my net, but it helps the fish as well. I just don't play them long.
Better on the fish.
I just don't, but that's my style of fishing. Okay. I go to a 5-weight rod. This is Sage XP. I'm not going to get into prices because this is probably a discontinued rod by now, but it's been rewrapped a couple times just because I love this thing for Stillwater nymphing at 10 feet and more. It's a fast action rod, but it's got the bend to it that I can horse fish in and actually keep control and gain control of a fish without having to work too hard. And swinging on 10, 15 feet of fluorocarbon line underneath an indicator, it's no fun. It really isn't. So in order to do that, yeah, I want something that I'm going to get good hook penetration to it real fast and easy and quick. So those are the 2 rods that I have. Now you're figuring out, okay, you're right, he does take 4 rods out when he's out fishing. A Stillwater line, I got a Type 3, and then I got 2 mid rods. And that's what's in my float tube. Reels. Reels have same thing, capacity. You have to have a drag system. The last one is the ability to spin the reel. And when you're on the water and you're midging, and you got all this line sitting there, because you're fighting the fish and it's all sitting in your apron, this is a real pain to have to deal with because if the fish takes off, now you have to deal with all this excess line down. You're in a boat, you're standing on it, fish decides to take off, guess what? Pop! There goes So, whenever you get into a fish, a good sizable fish, you want to get the fish to the reel. In order to get to the fish to the reel, if you have a reel that spins, I'm there. I don't have to do this and try and hold it and reel up all the time. So look for a reel that spins. If you're going to be that particular about the type of reel that you want to use specifically for midge fishing, yeah, look for one that has the ability to spin, because that's going to help you out with less of a nightmare, especially in a float tube, especially in a boat when you have excess line sitting all over the place. Okay? I won't get into the different types of reels and things like this, because there's a ton out there, but at least you know what to look for if you're going to be in the market for a midging reel.